Hello, everyone. Me again, Balliet Brand. So, a lot of the Hexicans, especially the ones that have been around for a while, a long time, since the beginning, things like this, it might be redundant that we always talk about, hey, the best way that you can maximize your staking and your return on investment and your yield and interest, etc., is by staking longer. And why is there a maximum stake length of 5,555 days? And why should you consider such a thing? So in this video, I kind of want to go over that. And once again, I think it's important for the Hexicans, especially the ones that are making videos that have been around for a while, to be redundant in the information that we are conveying. Because at the end of the day, it really is just the same information, right? It's just tweaked a little bit differently, and it's just used in a different example that can be better understood from person to person. So without further ado, let me go into that real quick here. Let me pause this big pep video that I have in the background here. So this is go.hex.com. Now you can stake on go.hex.com, or you can go to staker.app. In the description, I've got a little link for Staker app that you can download via Android or the iPhone Apple Store. Okay, so what are we looking at? What is this exactly? So this is just a random wallet that doesn't have any transactions for obvious purposes. But what we can see is Hex has been around for 670 days. We're on day 670. And right now, if you stake, you'll have 6 hours and 48 minutes until that stake goes from pending to locked, because that's when the next day takes over. All right, let's get into this a little bit more. So there's some cool information here, but this is what the video is really about, and let's just see if I can, right there. Okay, is the actual shares. Now, this is just 1 trillion shares, but the same math and information can work with different calculations. Would say a billion shares, right? A billion is obviously 1/1000th of a trillion, etc. Same thing for 1 million with a billion. Anyway, so this is the T-share daily close price in US dollar. So it might have even spiked higher, right? But that was just what this UTC daily close price was. So the point of the video is this. The T-share themselves, which is just 1 trillion shares. Okay, cool. Everyone can see. So 1 trillion shares used to be as low as 60 cents right here. So 60 cents. It says day 34. I believe it was actually day 33. But anyways, day 34, 60 cents. And that was January 5th, 2020. Now, a lot of us had heard Richard talk about, hey, this is a very unique system. There's so much parameters and game theory developed in it that there's a million different endless ways that you could go about doing this. But what he had always mentioned was, just like with Hex, he had mentioned, hey, don't buy on day one, right? He had mentioned don't FOMO on day one, kind of do an average in, like the EOS, a 351 day launch phase that the Hex initial phase and the adoption phase was claimed after. Anyway, so Richard also said with the shares that if you want to maximize how the system works, you want to stake as early as possible, you want to stake for as long as possible, and you want to stake as big as possible. The reason that you want to do this is because say, for example, you could do an annual stake all the way up through every year. So 1 through 15, maybe you've got another one for 5,555, which is 15.2. So you got 16 stakes total. Well, in my opinion, the person that has 16 stakes total, I think, is going to earn a lot more interest than that same person that takes whatever principal amount, call it 10,000, 1,000, whatever, and then divides it between 100 stakes. And what it comes down to is these shares. So let's get into this a little bit more, because this is really where the power of Hex resides. So once again, Richard had always said, stake as long as possible, stake as big as possible. And what that does, the reason that I had mentioned that I blinked out on, was that you don't want to spam up the network, right? The reason that Pulse Chain is being developed in the first place is because the non-fungible tokens on Ethereum, the NFTs, they're spamming up that blockchain. They're filling up and using the block space. Well, Pulse Chain and Hex is incentivized to, whether you're staking on Ethereum or Pulse Chain, you're incentivized to do a lesser amount of stakes, right? Because you've got a bigger pays better bonus, which is up to 10%, I believe. And then I think for like 2 million Hex, maybe. It's in the layman's guide that's always in the description below. But then you've got the longer pays better, right? Which is 20% more shares each year that you lock, up to about 10 years, which is 3,641 days. All right, let's get into the meat of what I'm talking about. And we're actually going to do the same thing. So once again, I like being redundant, and I hope that comes clear in these videos for the new people or even the old people, right? Sometimes it's good, even if you have been in Hex for a while and you know how it works. Sometimes you might not have had enough experience pitching it to people and explaining it to people. And so if we can really get down the pitch and the value proposition collectively, then I think all of us can really succeed in the presentation and the effective result, which is getting that person onboarded. And it's not because we want to onboard them, it's because we want them to be financially free, right? We're already benefiting if we're already in Hex and we're staked and things like this. And it's almost a selfless act to have your friend or your family member or the person that's interested in a better future and a brighter future. It's almost a selfless act to teach them staking and Hex and giving them the product and the tool and the information to make this life-changing decision. So let's get into it, right? Because, when it comes to investing, not everyone has the same amount of capital to put in at the same time. This is why DCC, dollar cost crypto, that's where he got his name, right? Dollar cost. So you can dollar cost average in, you can do a lump sum buy. There's many different strategies that you can do. But the best way to maximize your shares and your staking for Hex is to go as long as you can. Here's what I mean. So we can see this is the share price, right? This is just for 1 trillion shares. So once again, this number, you just divide it by 1,000, and the same thing would be for 1 billion shares, right? You divide this by 1,000, that's what the price is for 1 billion shares. And then same thing for 1 million shares, just divide the billion by 1,000 as well. All right, so let's get into it. So 18,883. So 18,884. We're going to do one more because for whatever reason, when I do 83, see how it just does 0.999? For whatever reason, there's like something going on here that I've always learned to just go 1 hex up, or if it's even a decimal, to round that decimal to the next hex. So anyways, we've got 1 T share, right? And what this is doing is whether you got 1 trillion shares, million shares, any number of shares, for the amount of time that you chose that stake, right? You're committing in a smart contract, just like you would do at a business, right? Or a bank, things like this. This is all of those similar concepts without the middleman, without the fees, without just the extra bloat, right? This is just you and a smart contract, and it allows crypto to, really replace a lot of the, business agreements and lawyer deals and stuff like this that might go on in the traditional world. But let's just say we want to, lock it up for 30 days. We're just going to get into an example here. So 30 days. So each day you lock longer, you're going to get a little bit of that bonus of that 20% per year. So we can see 30 days gets us, a 0.015 bonus. All right, let's just get into the meat of it. So 365 days. If you stake 1 year versus 1 day, not only are you getting 20% more shares, but you're also spending more time in the smart contract, which is just allowing you to, sit back, live the rest of your life, go about your life, right? Do whatever you want to do. But the cool thing about Hex is it really gives you your time back. One thing that Richard is a huge proponent of, real quick, I'll get into the screen in just a second, but a huge proponent of is not wasting your life, right? Is being able to better humanity and to fix a lot of the world's problems. But we can't do that if we're spending all of our time, trading or gambling or, entertaining ourselves to the point of like, our minds are numb, things like this. So Richard, before creating Hex, created Scivive and How to Fix the World, which are free if you search it up on richardhart.com. But the point is, you fix the money and you fix the world. So when we can reward people for delaying gratification, that's the same concept and principle that's used for any other, achievement in life, right? Whether it's you're delaying gratification, right? Whether it's health or mental or things like this, it doesn't all just happen in one day. It happens through time in that system and in that routine and the consistency. So with Hex, you just stake it. It's like set it and forget it, right? The good old crock pot or even like pressure cooker commercials. You set it, forget it, and you can go to once again, the description with the Staker app that I have below, or you can just type in staker.app in your phone and it'll pull you up to the download section for your device, whether it's iPhone or Android. But the point is you can set a alarm on your phone. Say if you have a stake for 1 year, all the way up to 15 years for each year, you can just set an annual alarm. And that way you can just sit back, know that you're at least earning some sort of trustless interest and passive income and yield in the top performing asset of the world, right? In 2020 and 2021 currently. So there really is no better product to be in. So let's just get right to it. So this is a cool feature that didn't actually exist for the OG Hexicans and the people that were here since day one, but this calendar. And what this allows you to do is, hey, maybe you're giving someone some Hex, or you just found Hex and say you've got a girlfriend or a relationship, right? Significant other. Maybe your anniversary, right? Your special day. Let's just say it happens to be on my birthday, right? We're actually going to do it the day before. So what happens is you want to realize it on the 24th and you want to do it the day before. The reason why is because if I were to start this, if this wallet didn't have zero, but it actually had this amount, then it wouldn't actually start. See, because you can see we're on day 670, but it doesn't start on day 670. It starts once this rolls over. So once it goes to 00 UTC, which is 6 hours and 37 minutes from now. And so once again, you'll see it go from pending to, once that ticks over, you'll refresh the screen or it'll automatically show, and then it'll go from pending to staked, and you'll see the difference. So anyways, so that's kind of how you function with the dates. I know that Staker app is a little bit different because you've got the Gnosis safe and you can set up staking ladders as well. And I believe you can see a calendar function in that as well. That part I'm not too sure. I know you can at least pick the days and choose how long you want to stake for. So Staker app is great for mobile, right? Go.hex.com is the computer version. There's hexmob.win as well that can work for mobile on this website, the go.hex.com. So once again, that's just for 1 year, right? And honestly, if you think of Hex kind of like a retirement account, or for me, I'm turning 25 on the 24th, right? So in 22 days, I'll be turning 25. Well, guess what? I've got time on my side, thankfully. And what I can do, and even if you are older and whatnot, and you don't think you're going to be around for this time, or just your kids are going to be alive and stuff like that, you won't be able to enjoy it. It almost makes sense to do those max length stakes, just as a freaking Hail Mary. Like I said, you don't need much, especially when you're allowing the time on your side and you're just spending all that time in the system, earning interest every single day. So even like a $20 stake in today's value of Hex for Quattro Cinco, 15.2 something years, that would be significantly more once all that time had passed. And let's get into that. So 3,641 days is the maximum amount for your shares. You see it go from just one T share for 1 day, right? And then 20% more for 1 year. And then now, guess what? You get a 3x, right? So you're getting the T shares or just the shares, right? Not the T share, but the shares. You're getting them, however many you have, at a third of the cost. And like I said, it's also the maximum benefit that you can do and that you can perform in the system. You're rewarding yourself in the future and you're being a good participant. When you look at the average stake length is like 5.7 years. So if you have longer than that, you're going to be making more than the average APY, and you're going to be holding on to the most scarce asset, which is not the Hex. The Hex is great, but it's still inflationary and stuff like this. But the shares, right? The shares are the most scarce asset in the Hex.com smart contract. They're designed to be more valuable than each individual Hex. So it goes to show you don't need a trillion, right? You could have a couple 100,000. And if you've got the intention, which is how the audits have proved, that the shares are supposed to be more than the Hex, then guess what? Even 100,000 shares would be more than 100,000 Hex in the future. Obviously, time needs to run its course. This is still a very early and young product in its lifetime, right? Bitcoin has been functioning for like 12 something years, and people have only been in Hex for under 2. It'll be 2 years, December 2nd, 2021 this year. So anyway, so now you've got the dilemma, right? So 3,641 days is the maximum amount of shares that you get, right, for a third of the cost. But then why is 5,555 days the actual time that you can serve? Why would someone want to choose 5,555 days versus 3,641? And let me share with you. We're going to go to Vision in a second, right? I just covered it in the previous video, but I want to do it on this video as well because, once again, it's very relevant. You're getting paid out every single day based on the amount of shares that you have. Those shares, they never get cheaper. Maybe in dollar price, they might fluctuate, right? It's all dynamic. But when it comes to the actual code, the smart contract, and what we've seen with 100% uptime, this number, this 18,883, has never gone down. And in fact, it's only gone up. It used to be 10,000 Hex per trillion shares when Hex first started off. And now you can see how significantly higher it is now. And what's it going to be in 10 years? Say, 2036, who knows? I mean, we could have 250,000 Hex per trillion shares, if not more. I mean, I don't really know how much that's going to scale, but we can see that it's almost 2x'd in a matter of 2 years. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes on in the future. So this is really the power, right? You've got, whether it's one share, whether it's 100,000, a million, billion, trillion, you see that growth that I mentioned from that 60-cent T share to its high of I think it was like 9 or almost 9,500, right? Twice the cost of Ethereum, which is really bullish because the Hex chart is sure, it's the top performing asset, yada yada, but the actual share price chart, which is what this is, the cost in a T share or just the shares in general, this chart is more parabolic and is more bullish and just better to look at than even the Hex chart, which is really cool because other cryptocurrencies claim to be proof of stake, things like this. And we see that Hex is really like the only one that actually is. If you don't abide by what you committed to in the smart contract, no one is going to punish you or anything like that. But the actual truth engine of the smart contract will, right? There's not a company, there's no Richard Hart, there's no, corporation or insurance or things like that. No, it's just a smart contract that you're interacting with. And that's why it's so cool, because it's you and the system, and you don't have to worry about, getting hacked, things like this. As long as you keep your seed phrase, right? Whether it's your private key or your seed phrase, which is generally 12, 18, or 24 words. They're random words. Those are the actual, it's the phrase. It's the, they call it the private key as well. It's a different generation of numbers. That's the same thing. But the point is that's the grand freaking master key. If you show that to someone, or if you take a screenshot, right? You screenshot that. Those are all very bad things to do, because now, you can be compromised in the future. Anything that touches, any seed phrase that touches the digital world is automatically, susceptible to possibly being compromised. So just something that's important, that even though you're not going to get hacked in the hex.com smart contract, the audits have proven this, 100% uptime has proven this. You as the user, as the staker, as the HEXICAN, as the person participating in the system, you need to take the responsibility to actually do what crypto is designed to do, right? Self-sovereignty, be your own bank. So instead of, having the conveniences of someone else doing all the work for you, you are taking the responsibility yourself, and therefore you are getting all of the rewards that normally the bank would get if you ended your CD early, things like that. So that's an important point that I want to make. All right, let's get back to it and try and not make this a super duper long video. So the reason that you'd want to hold it for the maximum length stake versus 3,641 days, if you can afford that time, right? If you can have that luxury, is because this amount of shares that you have, whatever amount it is, right? And you can see when you hover over here that, guess what? 3T shares, 3 something trillion shares. So whatever amount of shares that you have, you get to keep that amount for the length of the stake that you chose. And no matter what happens, when, say you do a 1-year stake, or even this one right here, ending on December, actually 18th, I believe, because it hasn't ticked over. But say December 18th, 2036, well, this example would have 3 T shares that whole time. And as these shares, right, as this share price, which once again never goes down, this 18,883, as the years go by and this number keeps just climbing up, it keeps climbing up to not only simulate compounding interest, but to make sure that the person that just ended their stake, right, that realized profit, that realized interest on top of their principal, it's to make sure that they can't get the same amount of shares for the same length. So they need to increase one of those variables, and that's the cost for the shares to buy back the same amount. And there's going to be a point where, the trillion shares that are already being priced out in general, right? Who can afford that kind of expense that's just getting in, right? $8,000, whatever the price is currently. But the point is whatever amount you have and you can afford today and get, do it, right? If you can delay that gratification, you're going to be thanking yourself later. And it's so beautiful to go to staker.app. Just go on your phone. Once all these stakes are set up, you just go to your phone, and it's not like you need to access your crypto via the stakes and whatnot. That could also be an attack vector if you aren't ending any stakes anytime soon. But you can just go to staker.app on your phone, click it, plug in the Ethereum address that you have the stakes on, and then you can view the status and the progress of your stakes without having to log into MetaMask every time, or your cold storage hardware wallet, things like that. All right, so that's pretty much how it works, right? When your stake ends, you've got 2 weeks to end it before you start getting penalized. And the reason this is because it's actually causing harm on the network and like extra energy required on the network when someone said that they were going to end their stake, say, here 15 years later, and they didn't. So instead of just rewarding them for being apathetic and for them having apathy, it's a punishment mechanism that, hey, you get 2 weeks. That's a plenty of a time of a grace period. So whether the gas fee is high one day or low another day, you've got 14 days before you start getting penalized. And the way that it works is you've got 100 weeks before you're bled out completely dry. So each subsequent week after the first 2-week grace period, you'll be penalized 1% a week. So once again, 100 weeks. And that's really where a lot of the interest and the mad gains come on later in the hex staking timeline, is because there's going to be people that lose their seeds that I mentioned. There's going to be people that share them with people on accident and get their accounts drained, which obviously sucks. But these are all things that are price positive for the people that don't have those problems and the people that took the time to educate themselves and take things very seriously. So yeah, when your stake ends, you're expiring those shares. Once again, those shares are more rare than the hex. I know it's not that way currently, but that's the way that the system is designed. And once again, we've seen in about 2 years that share rate nearly double. So what's it going to be 10 years from now? And when that person ends their stake and they realize, oh my God, I'm not earning, I don't have all of these shares, so I'm not earning this amount of interest per day. And then they realize like, oh, okay, let me try and buy back in some of my shares and get some of that more, does anyone have more of that, sweet passive income and that daily trustless interest? Well, if that person 10 years later, right, they end their stake, they try and restake and maybe get the same amount of shares, they're going to have a rude awakening, because that share rate, right, the cost of hex for those same amount of shares continues going up. That's the reason, right? That's the reason why the 15-year stakers do better than the 10, because the 15-year people, even though this number is going up and even though it's going to be significantly higher when the Cuatro Cinco people end their stake versus the 10-year people, they still got like another 5 years of these shares. And that's the really beautiful part, is as it becomes more rare, a t-shirt is going to be a thing of the past. Like it already kind of is. And a lot of the OGs, talk about t-shares or some of the other people, but it really is going to become a thing of the past, because if the max length stake you can do is Cuatro Cinco, 5,555 days, then you really understand how the shares become, more valuable individually than each hex. Because even though someone has, say they got like 100 T-share stake for 5,555 days, that's a lot, right? Some people might look at that and be like, oh my gosh. But when it's their turn to end the stake, those shares aren't going to be in the system anymore. And once again, if they try and buy back the same amount, they're not going to be able to, because the time has already worked against them so dramatically that it's going to be impossible. And that's why we say do staking ladders. Consider not just doing it all in one stake, right? Don't give yourself the opportunity to be tempted when you see the next 10,000x and things like this, maybe the first millionx, right? Don't give yourself that opportunity to, buckle under what you initially said. Instead, just plan and design your staking and end stakes around it. So if one stake annually for 15 years is too little, hey, do biannually, right? Do 30 stakes instead of 15. And maybe that'll be better for you. I know some people do quarterly, things like this. Just the point that I wanted to make that I've learned from myself is the more that you do dilute those shares by doing more stakes, you're kind of not maximizing the potential of those shares because they're divided between so many different time frames. So that's one thing that I and many Hexicans early on made, was just doing too many stakes. And so now, as some of the Genesis and older stakes and shares come out and the shares expire, I'm consolidating. And that's really the lesson that people can learn from the people that have been here since the beginning. A lot of people, sometimes they're just focused on the wrong thing, right? They're focused on the past instead of the present, or they're focused on the past instead of the future. Whether it's the present or the future, you should be focused on either one of those in both, because you want to keep yourself aligned. But the more that you look back and they say hindsight's 2020. Like, I wish I would have heard about Hex sooner. Well, it didn't happen. So, why do you think it's healthy to dwell on something that you don't have, as opposed to the opportunity that you do have, which might be discovering Hex today or a year from now, things like that. There's always designed in Hex to be, meat left on the bone. And it used to have a 50-year max length stake as the intention. But then when they started programming it, and because Hex is a smart contract on Ethereum, they found out that, hey, the Ethereum network can't handle that 50-year stake length. So you can see that Hex was designed to have a longer stake than what we have now as the max. But the beautiful thing is with that 15.2-year max, it allows those new people and the old people to have that same playing ground as the time goes on. No one's getting the upper hand type deal after so much time has passed. Everyone's going to have that phasing of that T-share price that only goes up. And we can maybe take a look at that too, actually, because that is something that some of these bots that they actually show, and they'll show you the payout per T share, per B share, things like that. But they'll also show you, when it spikes up and when it increases. So we'll get to that in a second. We're going to look at two more websites before I let everyone go. So once again, long form content. It's not a live stream. Thankfully, I'm at the girlfriend's place with dedicated fiber. So on Sunday when I do stream, I won't have that lag. And I did pay for my house the double megabit speed on the internet connection, and a nice freaking, it's like a spider, like an 8 antenna router. And then also got my Ethernet hardwire upgraded from Cat 6 to Cat 8. So hopefully the next Nights of Crypto stream that I host, or the next stream at my place, will not have that choppy, fuzzy, staticky thing. So that's a little bit more information when it comes to that. But let's get back onto the topic, because we're approaching an hour probably for this total stream. So once again, this website is actually really cool, because what the other website, the main website that interacts with the Hex smart contract, go.hex.com, what it doesn't do is have this kind of price prediction. When you look at Richard's random line that he draws and that he speculates about, it's obviously no future expectation or things like that, but God damn it, the Hex price is following that line rather identically. And it's what Whales Only says, where, hey, it's just math. And a lot of us, myself included, thought, this guy, who the hell does this guy think he is? This guy thinking, $10 Hex by the end of 2021, things like this, and sooner than we can comprehend. And I go back to think about how Hex was at a penny, because I was there with 4 zeros and then some digits, right? But it really is just all math at the end of the day. And when you see that Bitcoin did its 6.5 million X with all of its flaws that it has, and it doesn't have the game theory that Hex has, with the staking and the inflation actually gets rewarded to the people that lock it. When you have all of these theories and these mechanisms designed into it, you realize, okay, this isn't a dream. You can slap yourself in the face, and guess what? It is still reality. So what a cool reality to be in, especially during time of people getting laid off and people, not having the most financial stability. This can give you financial stability, and no one's saying that it's going to happen overnight. Obviously, it's relative on how much you're starting off with and what you can kind of afford with your debts and bills like that as well. But over time, I mean, if you are part of that 10,000x that's not being staked, say you're part of the 15 or 16,000x being staked, I don't care what amount you're starting off with, it's going to be significantly higher than before. All right, so let's wrap this up real quick, right? So hexcalc.net, day 670. Once again, T-shares $8,240. If we just take 18,884 and we do, the max length stake, we're just even going to say, for example, let's just be like really conservative. Let's just say $10. Why not? I think we're going to be significantly higher than this by the time we hit this time frame. But it's just to kind of give people a hope and a future to look at, because that's really all this is numbers that you're plugging into a formula, and it's just spitting out the data. All right, so here's when your start stake is, right? So it's going to start on this day, and on that day, this is the amount, right? 1 T-share. And once again, we see that what is 1 T-share today, this 18, sorry, whoops, the arrow scrolled up. What is the 18,884, that 1 T-share, which you can see right here? What is 1 T-share now becomes 3. And then once again, you're literally just tripling your economic mass that you're starting off with. So now the actual mass that the stakes are going to be calculated at are going to be calculated as if you had 3 times the amount of shares that you actually do, all because you just staked a little bit longer. And then scroll down here and we can see projected earnings. So once again, this is just a projection, right? If we scroll down here at the bottom, it says Hex earnings are based on the average daily payout of 5.78 Hex per T-share. And then it says with an inflation rate of 3.69% compounded annually. US dollar earnings are based on the Hex token reaching a price of $10,000 at maturity. Great. So once again, projected earnings, this is dollar value. You can change it to any fiat currency you want. And this is Hex. So what was a principal of 18,884, 1 T-share, you can see what even the principal would be with that $10 price target of $10 Hex for that kind of a T-share. That's what that value would be, let alone what your actual interest in the time in the smart contract would do. So then once again, you can kind of just scroll down and see, hey, here's the cumulative total between your principal and your interest. And this is what the projected earning is. So what today is $8,240. It's actually not even that cost, right? Because you divide it by 3. So what today is 8240.93 divided by 3. So what today is $2,746.97 could become, nearly $1 million just by the price appreciation, just by staking and maximizing your shares. Once again, doesn't matter if you have T shares, B shares, 1 share, things like that. It's all relative. They're all just shares at the end of the day. And once again, that's being conservative with the price target. Hex is designed to do that 6.5 million X. Bitcoin was sub penny. Hex was sub penny. Bitcoin went up to $65,000. Well, why the hell can't Hex do the same thing? When you look at the liquidity and you look at the actual measurement of how the data and the price moves, it moves based on, the volume of buys versus sells, right? There needs to be more buy pressure than sell pressure for it to pump up, right? The demand needs to exceed the supply for us to keep pumping. And what we see is we can also go to this other screen right here, right? We can go to uniswap.hex.vision. Once again, This is going to be like an hour-long video that I'm doing on the same day, and I got a couple more to do before I hang out with Abit and Mrs. Conway, Black Hexican and Patrick. But before I go hang out with them this afternoon, I wanted to get some work done this morning and help out the people that are just getting in today, or maybe even the people that have been in. But hey, maybe you just were kind of like a lot of us, where you just staked long and strong and you really have no idea what the hell it is doing or all of the concepts in it. Because even though it's simple as just, hey, it's similar to Bitcoin, but proof of stake versus proof of work, and all these different explanations, even though it can be simple to understand, I mean, we can see this is a 40-minute video. The one I did before that was like 33. It's as complex as you want to make it, and it's this kind of information and this kind of studying that is what's going to separate you from the people that just stake for 1 year. And I say that because most people that might just stake for 1 year, right? They might have made a different time length of a stake if they had known everything about the system before actually doing that stake. But some people, they just say, hey, let me just interact with the system. Let me do it for 1 year, yada, yada. And, sure, they're going to get 20% more shares. But if you have a different goal in mind, you can achieve that with the knowledge that I'm presenting, that literally all of the Hexicans are presenting. All of the information is out there. It just takes time to teach yourself, to educate yourself. And that's why when I found Richard Hart in 2017, March of 2017, I followed him literally every single day. And I've watched at least over 10,000 hours of his live streams. Not only his videos, but his live streams too. And that goes to show you that, hey, I put in my time, and I still do every freaking day. Right now I'm literally listening to Big Pep with one earbud on like a 30%. This is my second time listening to him. Listening to him in the background, right? So what are your actions versus your priorities? What do you want in the future versus what you're actually doing to get that? All right, so let's kind of wrap this up here. So this is uniswap.hex.vision. If we just go to this together, right? Uniswap.hex.vision. Well, it didn't do it to me this time, but generally, if it's your first time, it's going to push you on Uniswap v2. Now that's the current, liquidity pools and the pricing and the most accurate, data as far as that goes. But the beautiful thing here about version 1 is this is what Hex launched on, right? This was created maybe like, I don't know, like a week or a week and a half after Hex was launched. And so Hex had the opportunity of having the first mover's advantage on this automated market maker, which is great, right? You don't need a centralized exchange, which is counterparty, which is risk, which is the opposite of what crypto was intended for. You don't need to do that anymore to facilitate a trade. You can trade peer-to-peer. You can trade trustlessly and via an automated market maker that isn't going to, gouge the price over you. It's just a mathematical formula that dictates that. So it's really cool technology, and Pulse Chain is just going to do the same thing. It's going to copy all of that over, and now we're going to have the convenience of cheaper fees to do the same functions. So once again, so this was, let's scroll all the way back to the beginning just to see some Hex price history. So we're going to scroll all the way back once again. So December 2nd, and I think, this data didn't actually cover all of December 2nd because once again, Uniswap didn't launch until, we can see exactly 2 weeks after Hex was launched. But so similar to an IPO, right? A lot of people pre-buy and then they dump, they sell the news when it comes public. But we saw, we saw 4 zeros and then, 5.6, 5.5, I think, as the absolute lowest price. But it's just one giant parabola. And this is just in a under 2-year time frame. What's this going to look like when you look at the 15-year stake, or just a 15-year time frame, or do a double from that, a 30, a 45? It's all designed to be just one. Whale says log base 2, but it's just one big giant S curve, which everyone knows that the momentum keeps building and increasing as the curve goes upwards. So let's see, April, this is when the God whale bought. This was really a testament of the network being used how it was supposed to. So one of the Ethereum Genesis block, from the very first block of Ethereum, one of those people that participated and had Ethereum put in 10,000 worth of Ethereum at that time, April 2020, into Hex, and they did a straight up market buy. No limit, no partial breaking up orders to not slip the price against yourself. This guy did a big ass buy, and the price never went back to that time that he bought. You see that he, did the big buy here, and sure, we've got some sell off here, right? But even the lowest dip relative to that current time frame, which was big payday, that 20% of a penny was still higher than when Mr. Godwell bought in. So it goes to kind of show you the resiliency of the network and of the delaying gratification and reducing the supply on the market. So if you have a huge demand and you've already got a very limited supply, because most of it is owned by the origin address and entities that haven't ever sold and that don't have a reason to, but similar to Satoshi, they hold a lot of coins to boost up the market cap and to, be a good participant in the system. So once you have that, right, just me, you, the average person getting into Hex, and you realize how much is actually on the market, Hex is actually a lot more rare than people give it credit for. Once again, most people, they look at the bird's eye view, right? They just look at, oh, this supply is, 600 something billion, right? And then they dismiss it. Oh, it could never have a $1 trillion market cap, right? Because the supply is XYZ, and that means the market cap would be, yada, yada. And it really is that paradigm breaking system, just like with Bitcoin in 2009. Actually, it might have even been 2008, but since 2009 at least, Bitcoin was a paradigm breaking system. A lot of people compared it to the tulip bubble, but the tulip bubble never went back to its first bubble's price. What we see with Bitcoin, and we've seen it in Hex, but lesser of a percentage, but we see Bitcoin, it did its major run and it's got its cycle. It's got 3 years of a bull market, 1 year of a bear market. But then when it has that bear market in that bubble, it retraces 85% of the total. So not just of that move, but of the total. And the revolutionary and amazing part of that, the reason why I explain that, is because it's not a bubble if it keeps going back, right? Sure, that bubble like temporarily, pops and consolidates. I guess that is a bubble, right? But if it's going back to that previous level and then exceeding it throughout that next cycle, then as Richard has said, that's a world-changing innovation. And, a lot of people could have done very well had they taken the time to educate themselves and do some research versus just flap lips. People like Peter Schiff, had the opportunity to buy Bitcoin at like $1, never bought, and is like the most salty person in the world. Okay, so that's pretty much all we got for the video. So this is, once again, this is the price chart history. And this is in the daily time format. So someone had asked me and they said, Bran, can you do an individual video on what this uniswap.hex.vision is? I'm not going to, because it is actually pretty self-explanatory. I thought about just making one for you, but pretty much each candle right here is the time frame that you're choosing, whether it's daily, whether each candle is a day. You can change each candle to 1 week, so we can, pull the price down and hit control and zoom out, and it'll kind of scale as it zooms out. But so that's what it is, the time frame, right, for each of these candles being a week. And you can just see parabolic price rise. And the other thing too is this blue arrow. So these green arrows are kind of just, these green lines are kind of just a general channel or trend that we're going up and to the right. You can see nothing exact or nothing too precise. It's just general. But then the blue is where we've been pretty much projecting since May 3rd. And so it's cool to see that we go from touching the bottom of this to now, hey, we might be exploding out. And what happens when you have a parabolic move, right? This giant parabola that then doesn't dip at the breakout, but freaking breaks out at the, resistance point, which is right here. Because you can see what happened here. Hey, May 4th, May the 4th be with you, I guess. May 4th, 2020, we saw a huge resistance because it tapped this once, giant parabola move up, taps it, and then guess what? Consolidate down to here, touches multiple times this bottom part of the line of the channel. And then guess what? Now that it's set a, consistency and had like a price floor to kind of set up for the next run, now it's ready. And so similar to this one, but just a lesser of an angle, this is more of a, less gradual of a slope than that. And so I think that this is going to be the one that probably breaks out past this. Instead of just tapping it and going down, I don't see us tapping it and going down again and then breaking out up here. I see us most likely breaking out up here when we tap it next. So that's just my analysis. Once again, we're going to cut this video off right about here. But last thing is look, this is each candles a month. And how many freaking red candles do you see? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 candles out of all of these freaking candles are red. So out of 22, 5 of them are red. The rest of them are green. And that's what Hex is doing. Really zoom out when you're looking at this. I'm not a graph guy or a technical analysis guy, but I at least have learned since 2017 the basics, right, of what this is doing. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that, hey, this is forming a trend. And guess what? Each month, if there's only, out of the whole existence of Hex, if there's only 5 months that have been, negative, this is negative 31%, that one, it doesn't say, but that one's another 33.66. There's only 5 months out of like nearly a 2-year parabolic rise that you have some dip in consolidation, then that really is something that the world's never seen. And that is a revolutionary, life-changing product that can, change your life as well. It's changed a lot of people's lives, mine included, and many other OGs. And it's just interesting, right? It's interesting to think that, sure, you can't get rich quick, and this isn't a get rich quick scheme, things like that. But if you take the time to work on something today that you want for the future, right? Say, just like myself, I've been working on health lately, stopped drinking alcohol in excess and things like this and cleaning up the diet. Well, I'm not going to go back to my 6-pack that I had a year ago in one day, right? It just doesn't happen. You need to put in the work. So it's that consistency. And that's what the hex staking does. Whether it's anything that's like a self-help or like worth achieving, whether it's gaining muscle or becoming a better driver or a better student, studying and learning, it just takes practice, because you can think about it, you can want it all you want, but the more that you can take that matter, which is, the thought and the energy and stuff like that, but the more that you can put that into even a bigger action, once again, practicing things like this, visualizing, then the more you can kind of see that into fruition in reality versus it just being a pipe dream of you retiring early and being a millionaire, right? Most people say, oh, I want to win the lottery and I want to be a millionaire and I want to be rich. But what are they doing to get those things? And if their aspiration to actually achieve that is such a thing as winning the lottery, like, do you know what your actual chances are of winning a lottery that big, right? Where it's going to be like a retirement thing versus just putting in the work instead in something that's more stable and reliable and predictable, like Hex, because I see some people, they say, oh, I don't have money to invest in Hex. But guess what? These same people, they've got money to go out on the weekend a couple times a week to dinners, or they've got money to buy Powerball and Mega Millions, but you don't have money to, dollar cost average and accumulate the world's top performing asset of 2020 and 2021 that not only was the top performing asset, but that also pays you a yield and a dividend and an interest for locking for your designated time that you chose. There's no other interest like this in the world. Even with 100% of stakers in the system, right? You've got 3.69% inflation. If you have 10% of people staked that can out of 100, well, then you're going to get about a 36.9% APY, right, on that average stake length. And then if you have more than the average, then you're going to be earning even more of an interest because now you've got more of the shares for a longer amount of time. If the average is like, let's just call it, just 37, 38% APY, then I've seen, I'm not going to speak about my own stakes, but I've seen stakes that were 10 years, 15 years, max length stakes that had 60% APY, as opposed to that 38, that 40% APY, now having 60, like, geez, that's nearly a third more. It's absolutely amazing. And that's really where the power comes in is, hey, maybe you didn't have, as much economic mass as Billy Bob Joe over there. But if you kind of have the patience to have a longer time frame and longer time horizon than that person, then you might actually end up with a lot more than that person ever had because you were just willing to keep your, capital and your asset working for you as opposed to, stagnating and having capital that's just dormant. So that's all I have. Shout out to everyone. This is a amazing system. And I didn't even cover this right here, right? That right there, the pulse chain. All of the stuff that I said in this video, and feel free to share this with your friends. Sure, it's a long format, but once again, it's important. You have a freaking hour to watch a movie, or it's at least an hour, or a football game, or to party on the weekends and stuff like this. But if you have the aspirations of being financially free and being a multimillionaire and being retired early and stuff like this, and you're not putting in the work, then you're not going to get the result. So even though something like this is like an hour, it's very educational, it's very informative, and a lot of the research is myself that's already been through the experiences and done my own research and kind of just conveying it to you. Obviously, never trust, as I say. They say don't trust but verify. The same thing with myself, but the beautiful thing about what Richard does and what I do and what I strive for everyone to do is to explain why you came to that conclusion, which is what I do in these videos. Is I show you, hey, here's why I'm saying a 15-year pays out better than a 10-year, and why the shares are so important today, because every subsequent day that you wait, sometimes that actual share price, like the cost of Hex for the shares, sometimes I see on that whale bot that I recommend you click the notifications on, I'll see that thing sometimes, depending on people ending their stakes that day, I'll see the price increase, two times in a day, sometimes 3 times in a day. It's all variable based on the people that are ending their stakes that day. And, it ratchets up to make sure they can get the same amount of shares. So once again, that's the end of the video. Thank you everyone that tuned in. Richard Hart has developed a product that's been coming into fruition. It was designed to do a 10,000x in under 2.5 years. We've seen that already. And now it's designed to do what it was originally intended for, which was a black hole for the world's financial capital. You look at all of these other systems and all of these other places that have financial capital, mass amounts of it allocated, and none of them compare to what Hex can do. And all of that money can come into Hex, and Hex can be the most valuable thing in the world and the most valuable asset, and still be a win-win situation for everyone that's in it. Everyone's got their own different time frames, and the more that it goes up in price, the less you have to realize if you do sell and you do realize an interest, which, by the way, you can go to matcha.xyz, do a limit order, and then you're not even selling against yourself, right? You're selling into the liquidity. You're being part of the liquidity, and you're not pushing the price down or above against yourself. So once again, that's the end of the video. It's in exactly like an hour. So allmylinks.com/BallyetBrand. Thank you. If you have any questions, put them down there in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them ASAP. Thank you.